Okay, so we're starting off with the Napoleonic era. So think about how there were so many different forms of government in France. We go from the National Assembly to the Legislative Assembly, National Convention, now the Directory. Now the Directory has fallen apart and it was overthrown by Napoleon's coup d'etat. Okay, so we need to think about who Napoleon is and how he rules and how, at the end of the day, we might kind of view the French Revolution as a political failure because we kind of go from one monarch to another, but then Napoleon himself is ousted. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's just keep going. So Napoleon was born of Italian descent to a prominent but impoverished Corsican family on the French island of Corsica. Probably not a surprise that he was a military genius. He specialized in artillery. He was known as a child of the Enlightenment as well as the Revolution. So, I mean, basically realize that he is very much inspired by the Revolution. In the earlier phases, he supported it. He was a member of the Jacobins, so we can see him as, kind of more middle class, not very excited when the Reign of Terror takes control. But prior to that, he was very much in favor of a lot of the elements of the revolution and the changes that it instituted in the government. He rose very quickly in the army in rank because of the emigres. There were many aristocratic officers in the army that fled France when they became scared of the direction that it was going in. So, again, like we were saying last time, Napoleon was elected by plebiscite as the first consul. All right, so what ultimately does that mean? All right, well, he takes power in 1799 on Christmas Day, and the Constitution gives supreme power to Napoleon. So technically, a consul's supposed to be a revolutionary statesman. He's supposed to, have some executive power, but not absolute. But Napoleon behaves more as an absolute ruler than a revolutionary statesman. All right. He tries to govern France by making everybody declare that they are loyal to the state. He tries to reward people for their ability, and he wants to create a very hierarchical bureaucracy. But ultimately, you're going to see that people's wealth kind of determines what their status is. And you could say also that Napoleon could be seen as the last of the enlightened despots. I'm sure you remember those. So, ultimately he is an absolute ruler, but at the same time he's trying to take principles of the Enlightenment and use them to improve the status of his country. And one of the first examples of one of the enlightened things that he does is he issues the Napoleonic Code. All right, so we're going to see that prior to the Napoleonic Code, there was French law was a little bit I guess, unorganized. So you're going to see that he kind of codifies French law into a much more understandable and uniform form of laws. All right, in a lot of ways, we can see that this is the most longest-lasting legacy of Napoleon's rule. That is, he includes a civil code, a code of criminal procedure, a commercial code, and a penal code, and he emphasizes the protection of private property. All right, and what does the Napoleonic Code do? It centralizes central government, and it also creates administrative unity. So in other words, every part of the country is subject to the same laws. Right? It's kind of getting rid of some of the feudal nature of government prior to the French Revolution. All right, you're also going to see that that a lot of achievements of the revolution are going to be made permanent under the Napoleonic Code. All right, so again, think about some of the things that are established by the French Constitution, all right? Everyone is seen as equal before the law, all right? So, you're not going to have all these all these kind of feudal privileges. You're going to see, of course, that that serfdom is gone. It's not going to come back. I mean, something that was left over from the August 4th resolution in 1789. All right, another element of the Constitution, freedom of religion. All right, they kept the state secular in character. Protection of property rights. Again, I said abolition of serfdom, but there it is again. It gives women not very much, but they do get inheritance rights. All right, so elaborating on women a little bit, they were not seen as equal under the law. And women and children were actually considered legally dependent on their husband or father. All right. Other things that I didn't have room for here, but I'll mention, and they're in the notes that I'm going to share with you. Okay. Actually, women had an easier time getting a divorce during the French Revolution than they do afterwards. So in some ways, the status of women kind of goes backwards a little bit. Women can't buy or sell property or start a business without the consent of their husbands. Um, we're going to see that any income that a woman made went to her husband. And also, if a woman committed adultery, her penalty was far more severe than what a man's would be. All right. Okay, another thing that Napoleon tries to create is a little bit more of a meritocracy in society. All right, so theoretically, under Napoleon's rule, citizens could rise in government service according to their abilities. All right, in at least in theory, the idea was that people would be rewarded. The most talented generals and officials would kind of get rewards by having, jobs that fit their talents. All right, but in reality, we're going to see that wealth determines status. All right, so you're going to see that the government kind of rewards wealthy people who serve the state um, with their pensions, property, or so their rewards would be pensions, property, or titles. All right. So like half the titles were given to people who had served in the military. Right. So you see again, if you had done things for the state, you would get rewarded by Napoleon. Right. Napoleon creates over 3,600 titles between 1808 and 1814. But yet the total number of nobles in France in 1814 was only 1/7 of the nobles that existed in the old regime. So you see that Napoleon's actually giving a lot of titles to people during this period, right? You're also going to see that he's going to try to bring emigres back into France, all right? So he says if you declare a loyalty oath, right, you can come back into the state, all right? So you're going to see 100,000 emigres return, and a lot of them start to occupy high posts in the new expanding state. Right, you're also going to see some notables from foreign countries like Italy, the Netherlands, and Germany actually are going to serve the Napoleonic Empire with distinction. So you didn't have to be French to move into France at this period and take on a leadership role. You're also going to see that the sans-culottes, their working class movement, is no longer going to be politically significant. And you're going to see also that workers are denied the right to form trade unions. So really, in Napoleon's, in this careers open to talent, it really only benefits the middle class. All right. How does Napoleon reform religion? Well, remember some of the drama during the French Revolution with the civil constitution of the clergy, and also the cult of the supreme being. Well, you're going to see that Napoleon's going to try to repair the relationship with the Roman Catholic Church. All right, so he issues the Concordat of 1801. Remember, a Concordat, it is an agreement, right? So what Napoleon's trying to do, he's trying to make peace with the church because he feels like it's gonna kind of weaken the link to the monarchists who sought a restoration of the Bourbons. Right? Remember that there are still Bourbons. There are relatives of Louis XVI that are still alive that might try to take back power. But Napoleon thinks, all right, if we establish peace with the church, then the church may not necessarily be as sympathetic with the Bourbons anymore, and they may recognize Napoleon as as a hereditary monarch. Also, you're going to see that because there is still a lot of economic inequality in France, that maybe if religion is restored in France, that people who are of a lower status in France might be a little bit less likely to revolt. At least their church has been restored, even if they are still poor. All right, so provisions of the Concordat of 1801. All right, there's a whole lot of them. So sorry, the font got a little small here. But so it's a Concordat, so everybody gets a little bit. So it's not like one side is completely victorious, so to speak. It's a compromise. All right, so the papacy decides to renounce. It agrees to renounce its claims to church property that had been seized during the revolution. So remember the Assignats, they were backed in church lands, right? A lot of land was taken by the revolutionary government. They do not get it back. All right, the French government can still nominate or depose bishops. So again, the state still has some control over the church. So what does the church get? All right, priests who had resisted the civil constitution of the clergy would replace those who had sworn an oath to the state. So in other words, even if you didn't sign the loyalty oath, you could come back. Okay. Also, you're going to see that because the Pope gave up claims to church lands, the citizens who got those lands from the church had to pledge a loyalty to Napoleon's government. So, in other words, oh, and sorry about that typo. I'll fix that right now. There we go. So basically, you have to make sure, Napoleon wanted to make sure that the people that got this church land were loyal to Napoleon's new government. All right, you could worship in public if you were Catholic. They reopened seminaries. And also there was religious toleration to many other groups, Catholics, Protestants, Jews, and even atheists, and they all received the same civil rights. And we have the elimination of the French Revolutionary calendar, and it brings back the regular Christian calendar. Okay, so this is going to make a lot of people in the Catholic Church happy. Napoleon doesn't want it to seem like there's any church that has been established. He doesn't want the Concordat to seem like he's bringing the Catholic Church back as the official Church of France. And so he puts all the Protestant ministers of all denominations on the state payroll. So basically, you see that he's extending some of the same things to Protestants as he is to Catholics. All right, what is Napoleon doing for money? All right, so he is going to establish the Bank of France, which is actually still around, so it's going to be established in the year 1800. And the Bank of France is meant to serve the interest of the states and the financial oligarchy. It's actually a revived version of one of the banks of the old regime. And what does it do? All right, realize that France, obviously one of the major things leading into the French Revolution was debt. All right, the bank helps balance the national budget. Right, well, he balances the national budget partly due to the bank, but also due to some other measures. All right, he establishes a sound currency and a public credit. All right. The assignats were not working anymore. Okay, they're basically worthless at this point. There's severe inflation. And so eventually you're going to see that the franc is going to replace the assignat as the form of currency. All right. He also is going to issue other forms of economic reform to stimulate the economy. All right. So he's going to provide food at low prices. He's going to lower taxes on the farmers, which is going to allow them to produce more because they have more money to put into their business. He's going to guarantee that the church lands that were redistributed during the revolution are going to stay in the hands of the new owners. All right, so kind of no seizure of land. These people that were mostly peasants actually were able to hold on to this land, which encourages stability, and it also encourages them to produce on this land that they had acquired. Okay, it also makes tax collections much more efficient. And it does not allow trade unions or guilds to form. So it actually retains the provisions of the Le Chapelier law. I think I have time for one more slide within the 15 minutes. All right. He also is well known for educational reform. All right. So he bases his reform on systems of public education under state control. All right. So he wants to make sure that education is available to the masses. All right, so this is very new. All right, before education was something that really was only available to the aristocratic class. All right, so he organizes secondary and higher education. And the idea is to prepare young men, keyword men, not women, for government service and professional occupations. All right, however, there still is a little bit of a divide in wealth. Okay, so education was important in determining social standing. So in other words, there was one educational system that was meant for boys who were in school for 12 or more years, so preparing for the professional realm. And there was another school that prepared boys to enter the workforce at age 12 or 14. So, again, in a way, we still see this in some areas of Europe where there's kind of like a more vocational type of education and one that's meant for a college and professional path. All right, last thing just to know is that this is the new schools are known as lycées, and we still have lycées as the name of schools in France now. So we'll pick up with a new video in just a minute.